Greetings and salutations. My name is Eric Padraig, and I am the project designer for Haphazard Projects. I am also going to go ahead and confess my uber game fanatic hood for the game that I'm going to be talking about today, which is the Lone Wolf adventure game. I had so much I wanted to say about it, so I actually outlined it so I would not be babbling and repeating myself and all that other kind of stuff, because I just tend to ramble about these things. I'm just that much of a fan. Also, this is an event that I more than welcome people to hop in and ask questions and all that other kind of goodness, just to help raise awareness for this game and the works of Joe Dever in general. So, referring to my outline, I've broken it up into three areas. The first of which is appropriately entitled The Story So Far. In every game book, Joe Dever would write a section in simple prose, the story so far. And it was a background summarization for what you needed to know in order to play that one game book. It starts off simple, but by the time you get to other books, later books in the series, it's almost like reading a short story or a novella. But it's written very well so that even if you've played through the games, reading it is still fun. But okay, here are the basics. The original Lone Wolf books, including a compendium and a one-off series for a character named Greystar the Wizard, there are nearly 40 books that have been written in this setting, which is known as Magnamund. This is not counting the novels that were published, but this is, starting in 1984 to today. I think he's actually finished with or about to finish book 30, which was amazing, the fact that we were going to get that. Greystar the Wizard, I'm probably going to make a separate video for that because I prefer that one. But it was 4 books completely separate from the Lone Wolf character. And Lone Wolf is what they call an epic, heroic, dark fantasy. I mean, its setting is just very dark and bleak, and Greystar the Wizard kicks that up about 1,000%. Very, very, very dark and a lot of fun to play. Just as much fun to play, but I just like the story more. So back to Lone Wolf. This game, or this series, was worldwide best-selling. I mean, more than 10 million copies sold. It was printed in over 30 countries and translated to 18 different languages. It's also an award-winning series. And I just want to check my facts here. It got, 3 of the game books were named Game Book of the Year between 1985 and 1987. And that's including all the other game books that were out in the area that time period. And there were quite a few. Most notably, you had Fighting Fantasy and the Way of the Tiger series. But Lone Wolf's always had a little bit more of a fan following than the others. And in 1991, the Game Master International named it the all-time great as far as game books go, because it was one continuous storyline from book 1 to what was, I think, 28 at the time. Maybe less. It might have been only at 20 at that point in time. But anyway, um, it was a very simple premise. The main character, his name was Lone Wolf. Um, his original name was Silent Wolf because he was very quiet, very dour. Um, he wasn't really a good student. You know, he was just a passable, average student. And one day, particularly, it was a holiday. It was called the Feast of Ferman, which was basically a holiday where all traveling Kai Lords came back to the monastery and enjoyed fellowship. And basically, it was like the Kai Lords or Summerlands, the country that the Kai Lord monastery was in. It was kind of like a New Year's Day, so it was a big thing. Um, but during class, before the celebrations, Silent Wolf was just kind of, not really paying attention, um, standard bad student thing, And his instructor noticed this and said, okay, as punishment for this, while everybody's eating dinner, you're going to go out and collect firewood for the kitchens. So he goes out and starts chopping furniture, and soon he starts hearing the sounds of battle. He turns around and sees the monastery in flames, being attacked by the agents of the Dark Lords, who are essentially Cthulhu-esque creatures that it's like taking a Cthulhu beast and mixing it with a ring wraith. They're insanely powerful, and they spawn minions to go out and do their dark deeds and missions, because they're bound to a specific city, and can only travel out of that city, Helgedad, under very specific situations. So Silent Wolf sees all this going on. He drops the firewood, raises his axe, and starts charging towards. And depending on which book you read, because there's an expanded version and the original version, I'm going to talk about the original version first. He trips over a tree root, knocks himself out. In the unabridged, basically, director's edition, I guess, Joe Dever added a whole bunch of information to there. Silent Wolf did not trip over the tree branch and knock himself unconscious. He actually made it back to the monastery so that he could defend or help defend the monastery against the attack. Regardless, the monastery falls, and Silent Wolf very quickly realizes that he is the last Kai Lord alive on the planet. And the attack was so successful that he felt that he had to go and talk to the king personally and warn him, because the Kai Lords are kind of like Jedi or Green Lanterns in the fact that they kind of go everywhere to enforce the ideals of good, and openness and community. They're warrior monks. They're always expected to fight in the defense for good, but they are monks still. Like, they don't accept rewards for their actions. They never seek to involve themselves in politics or become leaders, anything like that. At the end of the day, they're just monks, and they're doing what they feel is the service that their god, Kai, put them on Magnamoon for. So the first book is about Silent Wolf, who changes his name to Lone Wolf because he is now the last of the Kai. So Lone Wolf makes the decision to go to Holmgard, which is the capital where the king is, and let everybody know, look, the monastery is destroyed. I'm probably the last one. I'm not going to talk anything more about the plot because I'd be giving it away, but it will suck you in to the story. It is epic from word go. And I don't know what else good I can say about that. Let's get into the adaptations, because this is one of my favorite parts, and you'll understand why when I get a little bit through it. There were 3 computer games, which were basically side scrollers that were adapted from the Lone Wolf books. And there was also an audio book for the first novel of Eclipse from the Sky, which was the first novel in the series based off of those game books. And the novels are great. They're just very hard to find. They've recently been redone into an omnibus of sorts, so you can actually get all the stories, because they were notoriously hard to find, even in the day and age of Amazon and eBay and all that other kind of stuff. At one point in time, people were trying to make a live-action movie, but it fell through for some reason until Convergence Entertainment bought the rights. And they are, as of right now, in pre-production of making a live-action Lone Wolf film, or based on Lone Wolf, which hopefully will include Lone Wolf, but, hey, that's me. There was also a online MMORPG that got a fair way through production. And I know this because I actually wrote for it. It was volunteer basis. It was fans that were doing this, not a company that had the budget and everything. But I was a quest writer, and oddly enough, the first quest that I wrote was the first scenario that I started running a couple of days ago. You can see that video in that session on the YouTube channel. But I started role-playing through it, through Hangouts, since I never got to see it in the game, in the MMO. So, a little claim to fame there. I just got to say that was me. But then there were 3, I believe it was just 3, attempts to make it a tabletop role-playing game. And the first major one was basically a D20 version that was released by Mongoose and written by August Hahn, who is quite possibly the biggest geek when it comes to the world of Lone Wolf. And Joe Dever gave him information that nobody else had, based on the last 4 books that were not released. So there's a ton of great information in the book, but it almost works better as a source book, because the August Hahn tried to make it simplified. It was D20, but there were no feats or anything like that. He tried to make it resemble the mechanics that were in the game book. And some of the ideas just didn't translate, but it was an awesome effort, and I bought every book in the series. They were all extremely well written, and as I said, they're great just to kind of read and go, okay, this is the setting, and these are this is the bestiary, and these are the most powerful artifacts, and how they interact with the setting, and all of this. And he had about 6 to 8 character classes, which was not bad, but there was no game balance between them. A Kai Lord would mop the floor with any of them, with the exception being 2 spellcaster classes. But I'm not going to get into all of that, because the game is still out. You can still get it on Amazon and eBay and whatnot. And if you're really interested in seeing and being able to play the Lone Wolf adventures in D20, like D&D environment, go for it. It's great reading, and it's pretty well done for D20. Just remember game balance issues. The next one was a multiplayer game book, which I have to admit I did not have any experience with, because when it came out I was pretty much broke all the time. and it got mixed reviews. Some people loved it, some people hated it. A lot of people just bought it for the Lone Wolf name to show support, which sometimes is the case when it comes to Lone Wolf. A lot of people will just buy it just so everybody can see that Joe Dever's work is very much appreciated even after all of these years. He still has diehard fans all across the world who are willing to help this guy get everything done and out there the way he wants it. And this last one was, in fact, the Lone Wolf Adventure game, which this whole video is for. It started out as a Kickstarter, written and designed by Joe Dever and the folks at Cubical 7. And if you don't know who Cubicle 7 is, just go wiki them. They're very well-known game designers, and they've done some great work. And to see them kind of pair up and do this Kickstarter really, really warmed my heart. The Kickstarter ended up getting about £68,000 because this is, a British, it was originally developed and released for the UK, and translated for Spain and Italy, which were two of the biggest countries besides the US that really had a huge fan following. But the adventure game was split up into 3 books in a box set. And here's where I'm going to kind of do a open boxing of this thing. Okay, so pardon me, I didn't mean to hit the laptop on that. So what we have here is the beautiful box set for Lone Wolf, the adventure game. And it's a different art style than what the fans are used to, but it's very evocative, and it still is very appropriate for the setting. And on the cover, those are 3 Kai Lords, because those are the only characters you can play in this right now. But the original game books, basically, you had 2 attributes, combat skill and endurance, and you had to pick a number from a random number table, which is actually printed on the inside of the cover of the box and the bottom of the box. Numbers between 0 and 9, and the higher you rolled, the more damage you did in combat and the less that you suffered in that combat round. The game was that easy. And if it was just task resolution, you would, again, pick a number on that random number table, and the difficulty would always be in the game book. It would say if you got 0 to 4, turn to this section. If you got 5 to 9, turn to this section. And one of them, the lower numbers, were generally very bad things that happened because you failed. One moment, please. I get thirsty when I'm talking this much. So, and they managed to translate the very simple mechanics directly into the game. You don't have to know anything about this game. You pick it up, play it. No prep work whatsoever, especially if you're used to the original game books. So let me show you what else came in here. The first thing on top is the obligatory read this first. Okay, and this is kind of a primer that basically shows you what you're going to need to do. On the very back, it has this section, rules in a nutshell. And honestly, it is what it says. So that's the equivalent of 1/2 page of the basic rules that you need to know to play the game. Half a page. Now, the mechanics can get more complicated if you want them to. The brilliant thing about this game is that it's actually two distinct play styles in one. You have the Initiate series, which is all the basic rules, and it's just like playing the original game books. But then you have the Mastery level, which introduces new elements. It also gives you a new attribute called Willpower. You get skills and traits which were never available in the original books or in the Initiate series. It just makes your characters more individualized, which is good, because the one thing I have against this adventure game is that it is too easy to level up, and you don't have anything in that book once you go to basically a level 5 character. Hopefully, the books that are coming out next will cover, higher level Kai Lords and more of their history and allow you to play more than just a Kai Lord. But anyway, back to the read this first. Flip it open, and it shows you right here that some of the stuff in the game just uses tokens, and they're designed to be flipped inside the box top. These were the good guys, identical to the pre-made characters. You basically flipped them, and wherever they landed on the random number table, that was the number you got. And then these were tokens for the Game Master, so that each one of the bad guys in turn could do the same thing. This big one is called the luck, basically for a luck test. You have the shining face of the Lord God Kai, the sun god, meaning good luck, and then you had the dark face of Nayar, basically the end-all be-all, like evil deity for bad luck. And you just flipped it for a luck test. And luck tests basically are tests that there has no bearing on the actual abilities of your character. Then you had these, which were for a new aspect called Kai's Favor, which a player can invoke basically divine intervention and get a chance to re-roll a failed roll. And then it shows you that there's also the combat results table. And here, yeah, I'm going to do this so I'm not hiding behind it. Which is an individual sheet where you look at your combat skill versus the enemy, and it tells you who does how much damage. And this one, let me double check I'm pointing at it right, is a simple front and back sided page of equipment and the costs. And I'll just tell you right now, the costs are expensive. You start out with anywhere from 10 to 19 gold crowns. A horse will cost you 250. A good sword will probably cost you 10. So, and then lastly, but not least at all, maps. Now, that's one of the things that have been consistently amazing from the game books to today are the maps that have been put together. And this is no exception. You get a one side of the map, which has basically the last lands, the more civilized areas, and then you have another one which it shows mostly Summerland, which is where, as I said, the Kai Lords call home. So, and then in the center, it just explains what the Lone Wolf Adventure game is. And it goes in saying, one person narrator up to 6 players, and if you've never read anything about a role-playing game, that's what you need to read. So really quick, just right there, and like I said, on the back of it, half a page, the basic rules. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to put that away. And the first book that you look at is basically this. This is the Book of Kai Legends. All right. In here, you can select one of the 6 characters. It explains the task resolution rules, the basic rules for combat, and that's basically all the player needs to read out of this. The rules in here are mostly for the initiate level, but it also does have sidebars and a section for making and prepping for a mastery level game. Also comes with 2 complete adventures, which I will admit are very unappropriate for Kai Lords. You know, they're warrior monks, and they're capable of great and astounding things. They have psychic powers, the ability to communicate with animals and attack people's minds, defend from mental attack, and phenomenal combat skill, and all of these other things that they can do. And the tasks put to them in these adventures just don't have that epic feel. They're literally designed as just oh, you've never read or done anything with Lone Wolf before, so we're going to keep it very simple for you, which, you know, is a good thing for some. But when you have somebody like me, who got the first game book when it first came out, and I know everything they can do, it's a little underwhelming. That's okay. The interiors are absolutely beautiful. I'm trying to get this without the glare. You get section maps depending on the chapter. The layout is very nice. You don't have a lot of wasted page. There's, there's information, and the footer almost always has unique information and insights for what is on the page. Now, if you look right here, you see, I want to make sure, yeah, this green scroll right here, okay? This is the type of sidebar you see for the mastery level games. It will always look like this, and that's basically where, if you want to play the more difficult version, which I say difficult, but it is still insanely easy, these are the things you need to pay attention to in addition to the normal rules. There's really not much. Like I said, you get a new attribute called willpower, which fuels a lot of the things the Kai Lords can do. Combat's a little bit more complicated just because it gives you more options. And then you have traits, which are, inherent bonuses to certain things. And then you have skills to represent actual training in various areas. And both of these can link up with the Kai disciplines, which are the main powers and abilities of Kai Lord. And there are 10 of them. And let me see if I can just remember them all from memory here, okay? We have animal kinship. Of course, it's pretty self-explanatory. Healing, which gives them a regeneration factor and the ability to basically lay on hands. Hunting, which is exactly what it sounds like, but it also increases your character's agility and ability to move silently and things like that. Camouflage, which is more hiding things from other people. At later levels, you learn languages very easily, and you can disguise yourself as pretty much anyone. You don't leave tracks, anything like that. Camouflage is awesome. Then you have tracking, which is exactly what it says, but there's also like this intuitive psychic connection you have to places you've been and places you've studied about, to where, you can be walking down a road and get that little tingle spider sense in the back of your head and go, oh, there's an ambush half a mile up this road. I mean, that's just the perfect spot for it, and I can tell from here that's going to be a problem area, and I need to keep my eyes open. But furthering that, the next one is sixth sense. And no, that doesn't mean he talks to dead people. He is able to basically sense magic, detect evil, not see the future per se, but kind of a psychic common sense. You know, it will tell him whether something might lead to danger or if something's safe. Lie detector, I can't remember if I just said that or not. So sixth sense. After that, there is mind blast, which when you use that in combat, it increases your combat skill as your psychic powers assault your target and make it hard for them to concentrate, and it actually does damage to them. But then you have the corollary for that is mind shield. And if your mind shield is equal or higher level than someone who's trying to mind blast, then they're immune to it, flat out. No dice roll needed. So you got that. And then there's mind over matter, which is exactly what it sounds like, but it starts off really low key. You can manipulate items with nothing but the power of thought and cause them to levitate or move about. And it's literally just, it's item. It starts out like items less than like 2 pounds, you know. But one of the really cool things you can do with it, even at low levels, is pick locks. You can literally just look at it and project your mind in there and turn the tumblers until, you know, the lock pops open. And I'm trying to see if I'm forgetting anything other than the one I was saving for last, which is weapon skill, which gets ridiculous at higher levels. But basically, you've been trained in how to fight with one specific type of weapon, and you are a bad mofo with that weapon. It increases your combat skill every time you enter combat with that weapon and use just that weapon. And that, of course, translates to more damage, less damage you take, all types of goodness. So weapon skill is just amazing like that. So quick go back over. So hunting, tracking, sixth sense, animal kin, camouflage, weapon skill, mind blast, mind shield, mind over matter, and apparently I'm missing one. What am I missing? So I'm actually going to open the book here and see what I'm missing. I'm surprised nobody's jumped in here, made a comment, or joined in and is just yelling at me going, this is the one you forgot, which is fine. You know, I prefer not to get yelled at, especially by fans of the same thing that I am a fan of. The book's just so beautiful. I mean, even when you're looking for something, you kind of get caught up, you know, looking at some of the things, which will actually lead me to this point. The books all have an incredibly well done index, and that is something that a lot of games do not have. So literally what I should have done was just turn back here to the index and look up. I've got the wrong book. It is not in this book, but that's okay because it leads me going further into the box set, and the next thing I've got in here is the stunningly beautiful map of the Last Lands and then Summerland. And like I said, I mean, these maps are just absolutely gorgeous, and it's expected to see something of high quality no matter where this stuff originates from. And then you have the one sheet for the equipment, expensive equipment. You know, of course, there's more than what's on this sheet, but this is the standard stuff that you would be able to get in the game books. So I think that's nice. So next, this is the one I needed. Next is the Book of Kai Training. Here you go. And this is almost entirely about making characters. Now, and it breaks it down to every step. And here, okay, The disciplines: animal kinship, camouflage, healing, hunting, mind over matter, mind blast, mind shield, sixth sense, tracking, and weapon skill. Okay, so I did manage to get all 10 without cheating. But it covers selecting your disciplines, determining your combat skill, your endurance, and your willpower, selecting your equipment, and the naming patterns for Kylo Wards. And you notice down here, what about there? You'll see I have it listed as Darkhawk, which is an homage to a Marvel comic that I loved. But also, anytime that I ran the D20 game or any of them as a player, my character was always called Darkhawk because it was usually a very brooding, morose character, but he was an astounding tracker and hunter, because of the hawk. So you see, the personality of a Kai Lord will give him his name. So anyway, I'm just going to look in here. You have an example of gameplay, which is needed for any new game that people don't have any experience with. It's done very well. And then it gets into how to play the game. And like I said, every chapter head has a map. Astonishing work. I just absolutely love it. They get into the proper terminology of the Kai. What kind of training does a Kai Lord do? One of the things they come out and say is that a Kai Lord at initiate level can cover 25 miles of land in one day, compared to the actual real world where hikers generally can do anywhere from 8 to 12 miles a day. 15 for like expert, hikers and things like that. So that right there is just an incredible testament to the training that Kai Lords get. They learn academics, they learn how to focus their psychic powers, and basically outperform normal human beings. Sections for what Kai Lords do, and then it gets into the 4 vows. And this is where they really get monkish. But the 4 vows, I'll go through here. You have the vow of fire, where you basically give away your earthly possessions, because as a Kai Lord, you're supposed to be self-sufficient. Okay? You don't need a lot of money. You don't need a lot of possessions, because the way they look at it is, if they need something, the god Kai will somehow find a way to provide it to you. The vow of light, which is basically showing that they are enforcers of law and justice in Summerland. They're held to a higher standard, but everyone in their neck of the woods, so to speak, knows for a fact Kai Lord means help. And kind of a one-off here, that these green cloaks that they always wear, it's a secret recipe, essentially, for the dyeing of these tunics. And the only people that know the combination to make these dyes are the Kai Lords themselves, and I think the king of Summerland. I think that's it. And it's very tightly regulated, so it's one of those things that, you see somebody in a green cloak and you're like, oh, you're a Kai Lord, and it turns out they're not. But you see one of their distinctive shades and you're like, you're a Kai Lord and I need help. So, what were the other ones? Okay, the vow of Solaris, which basically equates them to paladins now. It says that they're expected to fight evil and injustice whenever and wherever it manifests. Okay. Kind of sounds familiar with a bunch of other stuff like Jedi and Green Lanterns, like I said. But, this is a dark fantasy setting. And you really don't see something like that outside of paladins, which these characters are not. They don't ride around on horses and wear a lot of armor. They don't do it because those things actually end up slowing them down. And I think that's awesome. They don't need to wear armor, but they can. And then the vow of the spirit, which is the monastic lifestyle. Um, um, Even when they leave on assignments and missions, they're expected to refrain from vice, gluttony, overindulgence, and any immoral behavior. Um, there's some latitude for individuals who are like doing a covert ops sort, um, but you're supposed to try and do these things regardless. Then next we have important dates and names, which is basically a abbreviated version of the history of the Kai, especially compared to the D20 by August Hahn. That book has so much more, and also a little book called the Magnum Companion, which is no bigger than this game book, but wealth of knowledge. I mean, seriously, if you can find a copy of that, it will probably be the main source book you can use for this game. And then the last part of the book is creating your characters, whether it's initiate level or mastery level. And it goes into everything you would possibly need to know about creating your character. So that's Kai training. We'll pop that back here. Another page has the combat results table, basically showing, you roll this die and look at your combat skills, and then it will tell you how much damage you suffer and how much damage your enemy suffers for that entire combat round. And you flip it over, and they've gone over it a couple of times, but this is just a friendly reminder of how to resolve basic combat. Basic combat, not for the mastery level, but for the initiate level. So we're going to pop that in there and pull out the last book, which is the Book of Kai Wisdom, which is essentially the Game Master's Handbook. Okay. Now, everything in here is basically an explanation of what you can do with the disciplines and skills and new combat options, and then like hazards like fire and falling and all that kind of stuff, surprise attacks, some more equipment, special materials that your weapons can be made out of, how to advance your characters, which they have a method in here for the advanced, which allows you to play more scenarios than 5. It's almost like you're playing 20, and this is actually the one I like the most. I'll be making an edit to it in the way that I play, but basically every 4 or 5 sessions that you play, you get a new discipline, a new skill, a new trait, and then bonuses to your attributes. But it's broken down over, about 20 levels, so it's more game, game time for you. And at the end is basically a bestiary. It explains basically how to level up the enemies, make them more on par for your character. And they've got all the basics in here. But the entry in here for the Mountain Gaiac. Now, there are 3 levels of Gaiacs. You have Zals, which are basically the afterbirth of Gaiacs. They're very cowardly. They travel in mob packs, and it's very rare that they will do anything aggressive whatsoever. They usually just scatter and run. And then you have the Gaiacs themselves, which is basically slave labor and the massive bulk of the armies of the Dark Lords. Mountain Gaiacs are to Gaiacs what the Uruk-hai are to orcs. But it's not actually said out in this book. It just lists the Mountain Gaiacs. It doesn't talk about the regular Gaiacs. And I think it's because the stats that they have in this cover the range for Gaiacs and Mountain Gaiacs. This is the really cool thing about the bestiary. You look in here, and for instance, here's the Drakkar, which are basically humans that have sold their souls to the Dark Lords. And the combat skill and endurance listed shows you the range that it could be. But if you go back and find the stats for a Drakkar in any of the game books, that game book with the stats for that Drakkar will fall into these ranges in this book, which I think is so cool. Like I said, they really went out of their way to make this as close to the original game books as possible. And I appreciate the hell out of it. And then it ends with a gazetteer, history, who is where, listing of the kingdoms, populations, alliances, and whatnot. There's basically nothing in here outside of Summerland and a few allies. But again, find yourself a copy of the Magnamoon Companion, and it has every kingdom, principality, territory, anything on the whole planet. Whole planet. And it's a great read. It really is. So pop that back in the box. Next, if I can just, okay, I think, yeah. Character sheets, always the first thing that I look at when I'm looking at a new game. This version right here is the simplistic version, okay? This is basically for initiates, but you flip it over and then you see the character sheet for the mastery levels, and you can see the green areas, all right, just like in the books where it shows you green level, or the green sidebars is for mastery level characters and role playing. Same thing on the character sheets. You see green, you know that's something new. And that's really nice to have, especially if you're switching over from the initiate game to the mastery game. So we put those aside. And the next thing, which is awesome, if I can get them without completely ruining them, 6 pre-made characters. And guess what? The outside shows the character, gives you a list of their personality and who they are, and right here, why should you play this character? Okay? Why should you play the character? I mean, it tells you right here, if you want to be the best combative character, this is the one you want to play. If you want to be the hunter and tracker, or the most powerful psychic, it'll tell you. It'll tell you right here, okay? Pardon me while I get a little bit more comfy. Now then, when you open this up, you have the character sheet right there in the center, which is very nice. Over here, it explains your action chart, which is just a fancy name for character sheet. Okay? And then on this side, right here, it basically goes into who your character is, and then it has a section that says in his own words, and it will basically show you manner of speech, and outlooks on life and everything. And then, as I said down here, it's going to show you this character is great because, and it will have a list. But at the bottom of almost all of them, in green, which we now know is for mastery level games, it will have an in green statement on all of these pre-mades. Then you flip it over and look, it's the mastery level character sheet for this guy. And they have this for all 6 pre-mades. And the pre-mades are balanced. If you have 6 people playing the game, 1 playing each one of these characters, it will be a very effective group. Very effective. And last but not least, I talked about this in the very beginning. Tokens are all in here. And I described them earlier. These are punched out because I've already played a game. And that is on my YouTube channel and on the Lone Wolf Game Books Facebook page, and the Tabletop One Shot Gaming Facebook page. That video is there, and I'll have another one I'm running tomorrow, and then I'll publish that one. And I'll try and do one more to finish up that scenario before the campaign starts in earnest. So that's it. That's everything you get inside this box set. And the craziest part about that, for all of this, and the extraordinary production value of this, all of this, $29.99. $29.99. How long has it been since you have seen something with this much resources for $29.99? The original box set for Forgotten Realms was about the same price, but the production value for that was not as good as this, and the editing was horrible. Anyway, I'm not going to talk crap about Forgotten Realms because it is my favorite of the D&D settings. But from now on, if I run D&D, I'm probably going to run it in a way that I can include Kai Lords, because there is so much information for them out there. This game just showcases them in the best light. So in conclusion, I just want to say, find some people, play the game. It's available on PDF for DriveThru RPG and RPG Now. The PDFs are, of course, less expensive, but you can get the box set from Cubical 7 or from Amazon and places such as that. But whatever you do, buy it. Don't just share it. Don't torrent it or anything like that. Because when you buy a new copy, then the actual creators see money back from that. If you buy a used copy, they don't see any of that money. They don't see any of that money at all. So I implore you to buy a new copy so that Joe Dever and August Hahn and everybody else that worked their collective asses off for this game can see how far-reaching their work was and how much it's appreciated from people that are actually buying copies. As an independent game publisher myself, that's the thing we look at, and that's how we can tell, how good we're doing. So you need to do this for them. If you haven't really seen anything in this that has gotten your attention, there's a group called Project Aeon, and I believe I mentioned them. I might have missed them in my outline, but just in case I missed it, sorry. Project Aeon has all the game books for free. You can download them or just play them directly online, and they've got a handy-dandy little app you can use for your character sheet, so you don't actually have to write it out. But the entire series is being released online for free. So you can try it before you buy it, as they say. Personally, I prefer having a book in my hand, but I know a lot of people prefer PDFs and things like that. So there's no harm in trying it out. In fact, you can read all the game books there and still come back and get the box set, and nothing that you played in the game books will ruin anything they cover in these books at all. So definitely, if I didn't say something that really caught your attention in any way, Project Aeon, read one of the books. I dare you to read one of the books and say that you do not enjoy it on some level. I dare you. So in the comments, after I post this thing, in the comments, come back and tell me how right I am. And if you think I'm wrong, I want to hear that too. I want to hear your opinions. And I really hope that you will join me again when I run the next session, which will be tomorrow. So it might not get published until Sunday. Saturday, I'm running the part 3 to A Cold Fire Burns, which is the prequel to the campaign. So I'm running it Friday just for one guy, the first guy, Nathan, who ran through the first section. And then Saturday, he's being introduced to more Kai Lords who are in his neck of the woods, and they're going to form a party and take care of everything. So Friday and Saturday I'm making videos, and Sunday I'll put them up, and you guys can take a look at those. I will tell you right now, the first video I filmed was only 2 hours in length, and it was incredible fun. So check us out. Check out the books. Read up on Joe Dever. He is an amazing man who just he loves his fans, and he really enjoys talking to them, and that's why he does his work. But then again, that's why any writer does their work. It's for their fans. But this is one man who deserves some respect and some help. He's kind of like the Stan Lee of dark fantasy gaming. I put him up there on that level. So yeah. My name's Eric Padraig, and I know I've ummed and awed and all that other kind of stuff. Tried to stay close to the outline, missed a couple of things probably, but that's okay, because I was trying to keep this under an hour, and it looks like I am just under that, which is good. So check out my YouTube page, and I hope to see you in the comments, or possibly even during one of the game sessions. So take care, have a great weekend, and we will see you later. Thank you.